Presence on board the International Space Station, we are approaching the point of the approach ellipsoid exit, which will mark the end of integrated operations with the International Space Station and the flight control team here in Houston. Just a reminder, on board, 7 crew members representing 3 nations: Alexei Ovchinin, the station commander, and his Roscosmos colleagues Ivan Wagner and Kirill Peskov, Anne McLean, Nicole Ayers, and Don Pettit of NASA, and Takoya Onishi of the Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency. Ovchinin, Wagner, and Pettit are next up to depart the station on April 19th. They are scheduled to return home to the steppe of Kazakhstan and a parachute-assisted landing on April 19th U.S. time, April 20th in Kazakhstan. Before that happens, another NASA astronaut, Johnny Kim, along with 2 Roscosmos cosmonauts, will be launching from Baikonur on April 8th as that continuous presence of researchers on board the International Space Station continues unbroken. Sandra?
And thank you so much, Rob, for that update. We really appreciate you joining us here as you spent your evening in Mission Control Houston. Again, we are continuing to get these views following Dragon's undocking from the International Space Station at 10:05 p.m. Pacific time. That sets us up for a splashdown tomorrow afternoon at 2:57 p.m. Pacific time off the coast of Florida. And so we did mention that the crew was busy with a lot of science and research investigations during their time on board the International Space Station. That really is the whole point of the International Space Station, is to conduct science and research investigations, eventually leading to longer duration missions to the moon and then on to Mars.
We're, of course, standing by for any further communications from Crew 9 on board Dragon Freedom at this time. But it's a great opportunity for us to comment on some of the amazing science that Crew 9 conducted while they were on board the station. In total, Crew 9 completed more than 150 experiments, conducting over 900 hours of research. Following their splashdown tomorrow, some of those time-sensitive experiments will be among the first offloaded off the capsule and then returned to various research facilities across the country so that the science can continue.
And in addition to that science, they also completed a few spacewalks, one of which was to actually swab the outside of the International Space Station for microorganisms to see if anything might potentially be able to survive the harsh environment of space, which is pretty interesting. Another one was a spacewalk to remove a radio frequency group, or the RFG. NASA astronaut Sunny Williams was able to successfully remove that, which was a big milestone for NASA. And as you mentioned, over 530 hours specifically dedicated to NASA science between NASA astronauts Butch Wilmore and Sunny Williams. So that just goes to show the great use that the microgravity lab has for science and research on the ground.
I still can't get over that fact that you shared that it has been almost 25 years of continuous operation on board the ISS. That's amazing.
Yes, over 270
people. On 2 for PMA3 closeout photos.
Go ahead, Ann.
I just downlinked the card with all of the PMA3 and IDA and Dragon Hatch photos, as well as Crew 9 departure. Those are on SSC 17.
Copy, 17.
And just want to clarify, also on 17, I did a whole series of kind of inspection documentation photos before departure, and then a series after departure per the instructions. So 2 different folders with before and after photos.
We copy.
And that was the voice of NASA astronaut Anne McLean, who is still on board the International Space Station, stepping through procedures with the ground to wrap up after undocking, taking some photography of the hatch that the team on the ground will inspect, make sure everything checks out just fine. So we are awaiting the confirmation that Crew Dragon Freedom has exited the approach ellipsoid. We're expecting that here in just a couple of seconds here, really. So we might hear that call out here shortly.
And again, if you're just joining us, the approach ellipsoid is a three-dimensional ellipsoid measuring 4 kilometers by 2 kilometers by 2 kilometers in the same family as the keep-out sphere. One of the key differences with the AE is that vehicles outside of it have to be on what we call a 24-hour safe free drift trajectory, which means that the spacecraft would not cross into the approach ellipsoid for at least 24 hours again, even if it lost all maneuvering.
That's exactly right. So we'll continue to stand by for that. Now, you may be wondering, what will the crew be doing during their 17-hour phasing? You did hear the call out earlier that they had to go to doff or take off their spacesuits. So they'll get settled in, have the opportunity to have a meal, and try and get some sleep before their targeted splashdown off the coast of Florida tomorrow afternoon at 2:57 p.m. Pacific time tomorrow afternoon. So we are looking forward to seeing them splash down off the coast of Florida tomorrow. So continuing to stand by for that approach ellipsoid exit. Should be hearing the call out any moment now. And that will really end the portion of integrated operations between the space station, Dragon, Hawthorne, Mission Control, and Mission Control Houston as well.
Freedom, SpaceX on the Big Loop. Dragon has now exited the approach ellipsoid and is on a 24-hour safe free drift path. Please make sure that comm is configured for Dragon to ground.
And SpaceX Freedom on Dragon to ground. Understand we're out the approach ellipsoid, 24-hour freedom.
Good confirmations there, both from Mission Control and Dragon.
And again, we did hear confirmation that Dragon Freedom has now exited the approach ellipsoid, or AE, which is that imaginary shape that's three-dimensional ellipsoid measuring 4 kilometers by 2 kilometers by 2 kilometers in the same family as the keep-out sphere. So one of the key differences with the AE is that vehicles outside of it have to be on what we call that 24-hour safe free drift trajectory. This means that the spacecraft would not cross into the approach ellipsoid for at least 24 hours, again, even if it lost all maneuvering.
With that, Crew 9 has officially departed the International Space Station. As Sandra mentioned, it will take them about 17 hours until they make their way back to Earth. So the crew is currently settling, as Sandra mentioned, for a little bit of dinner, or maybe get their suits off before they take some time to rest before returning to Earth. Dragon is, of course, targeted to splash down off the coast of Florida tomorrow at 5:57 p.m. Eastern, 2:57 p.m. Pacific on March 18th, followed by the crew getting picked up at sea by a SpaceX recovery vessel. As they rest up, our teams here will continue to keep an eye on the weather to ensure a safe return for Dragon and our Crew 9 astronauts.
And though our coverage here in Hawthorne today is wrapping up for now, we will turn it over to the NASA team in Houston to take us through the next phases of the Crew 9 mission. Our friends at the Johnson Space Center will provide continuous live audio-only coverage along Crew 9's journey home until we rejoin tomorrow. You can find the audio-only link by visiting nasa.gov/live and clicking the mission audio link, or by searching for NASA Mission Audio Live Feed on YouTube at go.nasa.gov/live-ISS.
Meanwhile, we'll rejoin you for live visual coverage starting roughly 1 hour prior to splashdown at 1:45 p.m. Pacific. As always, you can find mission updates on X at NASA, at SpaceX, and on the web at nasa.gov. Thanks so much for watching. We'll